Bonjour and welcome to another episode of ASMR in the best possible timeline. Today's episode is going to be some mic brushing, mic brushing, and a whisper ramble about my experience as a toxic mold survivor. What I commonly refer to as moldy. And if you came to this video because you want to learn about all things toxic mold and you don't know why I'm whispering, ASMR is a technique similar to acupuncture or emotional freedom tapping, where we try to calm the nervous system and engage the parasympathetic nervous system to promote rest and digestion. So if you are a moldy, then this actually might be really good for brain retraining, which is something I highly recommend you check out if you think you might be a moldy. So yeah, today's whisper ramble is going to be about my experience with toxic mold, and I'm doing this video because I had posted on my community page a while back asking people for if they had any questions, and I would do like a Q&A. And my dear sweet friend Mauve, who I care for it so dearly, was like, what do you want? What do you wish people would know about toxic mold? So thereafter, I got sick. I didn't really do any videos for a while. This is my first answer to a Q&A question, and it's just part of what I want people to know about toxic mold. She asked in her question, she was like, it's okay if you want to do like a whole other thing about this later, but that was her question. And so the answer is yes, I want to do like a whole mold series, and you sweet Mauve have inspired me to do the first video. I figure we should start at my beginning. So here we go, my mold story. They estimate that 22% of the population is susceptible to, like, genetically susceptible to the devastating illness that mold can trigger. That doesn't mean that the other 78% of the population is like in the clear at all. It just means that 22% of us can be like canaries in a coal mine. So while mold can eventually cause like a heart attack or a stroke in anyone, we are going to be real sick way before stuff like that happens. And we know now, because of epigenetics, that actually you can go in and out of being a moldy. So I was actually around more mold as a younger person. Didn't notice devastating illness from it at all. And then a series of like really dramatic events happened. Sorry about that brief intermission. There was some extracurricular noise. So yes, I was actually around more mold. This is really nice. Maybe I'll just do this for a while. I was actually around more mold as a younger person. Now, I don't know what kind of mold it was, and I don't know what kind of bacteria was around either, because the latest research is actually showing that in these water damaged buildings, it's actually the bacteria that is causing a lot of the systemic illnesses that moldies are experiencing thereafter. So your epigenetics can get turned on or off. So you can have this propensity for mold-triggered illnesses, but the gene for the vulnerability can be turned off, and then you can go through chronic stress or trauma or grief or showcase, and these vulnerability genes get turned on, and all of a sudden, where before mold didn't affect you, you can't talk or walk. So that is where my mold story is going. So let's see. The year was 2017, and I had experienced a devastating amount of trauma that is detailed on my Patreon page, which is not available yet, but that is where that story is. And yeah, so just the Cliff Notes version of it. I lost my mother, I lost my friends, I lost my home, I lost my job. There was a lot of loss, and that was just a couple months into the year. Then I moved back to Chicago. I started performing with my improv troupe at Second City. We were in a weekly showcase. We had a weekly gig at Second City. So cool. Wish I could have called my mom and told her about it. And I moved into this apartment. It was gorgeous. I think it's like the prettiest place. One of the prettiest places I've ever lived. It was my favorite part of Chicago. Like walking distance from my favorite open mic, walking distance from my favorite coffee shop, walking distance from my favorite bar where they had this really cool lip sync thing. And like, I loved the location. The apartment was gorgeous. Vaulted ceilings, exposed brick, bay windows, like so inspiring. We had a gym in our apartment. It was bananas how beautiful and awesome it was, but it was also like a pig with lipstick, you know. I had what's it called? This is a mold thing, not being able to recall words, by the way. Wood floors. And one day I had mirrors for the sliding closet doors. And one day I noticed in the sliding closet door that about an inch and a half underneath my wood floor was another wood floor. But that wood floor looked like something off of the set of Vikings. Like it looked like it was 100 years old. And then also there was no visible mold, or like very, very little in the grout in the bathroom. But if you showered too long upstairs, it like rained in the kitchen. So there was a vent for like the heating and the air in the kitchen, and it would just like drip, drip, drop little April showers. If you shower too long upstairs. So I was like, obviously there's a leak here, like is it bad? And I moved in with some would-be friends of mine, and they had lived there for years, and they were like, yeah, landlord won't do anything about it. And I was totally ignorant at the time, so I was like, whatever, moving on with my life. It's his house, it's being ruined, stupid. But it was my health that was being ruined. So I moved in the end of March, like the last week of March, and so April was like fine. I mean, I was crying all the time. My mom just died. And then in May, we turned the AC on because it started to get hot in Chicago. And when we turned the AC on, I just started to fall apart. The first thing that happened in hindsight, as I like reverse engineer photos, is insomnia. I took a photo at 5 o'clock in the morning and sent it to someone on Snapchat with like the caption of like, can't sleep, clowns will eat me. So it was like 5 a.m. and I had not gone to bed yet, and I had never had insomnia before. So in hindsight, that was my very, very first symptom. The first thing that I noticed was I was painting at my friend's house, and she's telling a story about this guy that she like obviously needs to break up up with. And I kind of like black out for a while, and I come to, and I'm like, what is going on in this story? Like, I have no idea what she's talking about. So that was bad. So I didn't tell her either, because I was just like so weirded out. And if you watch the show Brain on Fire, I actually have an idea for a show that feels a lot like Brain on Fire. That's like half of it's like Brain on Fire meets Normal People on Hulu. Amazing show. Anyway, Brain on Fire with Chloë Moretz, true story of a girl who gets, I think, encephalitis of the brain, I want to say, but takes a really long time to figure out what is wrong with her. I watched that movie, and like 10 minutes into the film, I was crying because she's like sitting at her birthday party, and you can tell she's just kind of like, what is happening? And that's what it's like. It'd be like that. Yeah, she's talking, and I'm like, what is happening in this conversation? But I don't tell her. Just like Chloë Moretz doesn't tell people, like, hey, I just browned out during the happy birthday song. Instead, I'm like, I'm not feeling so hot, I think I'm gonna go. And that's what mold does. You're like, I don't feel good, I'm gonna go home. I don't feel good, I'm gonna break these plans I had to leave my house because I don't feel good. And you don't realize that the reason you don't feel good is your house is killing you, or your school, or your workplace. I think the CDC says that like 60% of buildings in the United States are water damaged. And that's like the CDC estimates. It's probably more than that, which is just like absolutely terrifying, obviously. So I go home, and in hindsight, the next symptom, reverse engineering, just like, it feels like you're on a stage and you're rehearsing, like, okay, what happened after that? So what happened after that? That was weird, and it never happened before. Is I'm walking my dog with the person that I'm dating at the time, who was an angel, and I sneeze, and my back gets thrown out. Now, in hindsight, I realize that my brain was swollen, my spinal cord was swollen, and that is why I threw my back out and sneezed. And I've never done that since, except for that summer. That summer, I would do that several times throughout the summer. So that happened, and when I threw my back out, I mean, like, I'm walking, sneeze, I collapsed. I just collapsed in the middle of the sidewalk. And he was like, what on earth? And I was like, I can't move. And he was like 6'8", thank God. And then my housemate ended up walking by too. So the two of them had to carry me up 4 flights of stairs because I could not stand. So that was the next thing that happened. I'm still like not listening to my body, not in communion with myself, like, at all. And just, you know, trying to chug on ahead, journaling every day, crying all my feelings away. So recommend that. Kept Humpty Dumpty together during this very trying time. Okay, so I threw my back out. So the first thing that I noticed, and I'm like, this is weird. Sorry, this is TMI. Hopefully you're like one of those people that gets relaxed hearing about murder mysteries or something, because it's a sad story. So the next thing that happened is that there was blood and mucus in my stool. And when I say there was blood and mucus in my stool, I mean there was so much blood and mucus in my stool that it looked like globs of coconut oil, and just like fistfuls of blood. And I'm like, this is bad. So I go to the ER, and the person that I'm dating at the time, sweet as pie, like the sweetest sweet that ever sweeted, but he's like, who cares? Blood and mucus in your stool. I'm like, okay, you have very low standards for like what is okay for your body. This is weird for me. I've never experienced this before. I'm gonna figure this out. So I go to the ER and they're like, that's fine, don't worry about it. So I go home. And then things start to get really weird. And at this point, like, I'm not going to be able to tell you chronologically what happened anymore. And I'm probably going to forget about 50 symptoms. But here's what I do know happened. Let's see. I lost words. So oftentimes when I would speak, I would speak like this. I had to like find every single word. I did not know my words anymore. If you speak a second language or like dabble in another language, it's very much like that, where you're like, oh, what's the word for that? And that was me speaking English all of a sudden. So I had to like find every word. My memory got so bad that like the guy from Memento, his memory was like leaps and bounds better than mine. Yeah, it was bananas. I remember having a conversation with my friend's sister who had dealt with some strange illness stuff, and I remember I'm trying so hard to like look normal. I don't know why. Stupid in hindsight, don't do that. What a waste of my energy, but I was, and I'm talking to her and she's giving me advice and telling me about doctors and stuff, and I'm just desperately trying to hold on to like the last part of any sentence so that I can respond like a quasi-normal person. So if you used a conjunction, right, and, or, but, in a sentence, I could only try to hold on to the second half of what you were saying, and try to respond to that. And oftentimes I would trail off in my own sentence. So I'd start a sentence and then I'd just stop talking. And the person would be like, what? And I'd be like, what? And they'd be like, you were just talking. And I'd be like, what was I saying? I didn't know. It got so bad that one day in the ER, they were like, what year is it? And I was like, it's definitely not the 90s. And they were like, anything else? And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's 2001. I don't know if it's 2012. I don't know if it's 2020, 30. I have no idea. But I know we're out of the 90s. And they kept me over in the hospital that night, did CT scans, and they couldn't find anything. They thought that I had an aneurysm. They thought that I had a stroke. I couldn't move my tongue in a circle. It would move in like half a circle and then just go straight up and down on the other side. And so sometimes when that was happening, I would end up talking like this because I just couldn't move my tongue. Let's see, other things that happened. One time I went to go do dishes and I couldn't move my fingers. I just like, and then I grabbed the cup with my hands and I was like, this is bad. My depth perception got really bad. I couldn't drive for months. I couldn't grab, like I'd go to like grab a glass and I'd be like, I couldn't see straight. I was seeing things. I was seeing like shadows and lights. Unlike the girl in Brain on Fire, like I knew those were hallucinations. I was like, that's was a hallucination, was the olfactory hallucination, so like smell hallucinations. So one day, I'm being driven to the ER by the angel that I'm dating, and I'm like, oh my god, that breakfast place, like, we must come back here, where is this delicious smell coming from? We must have breakfast there. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I talking about? Like, it smells like the most inspired toast. It didn't smell like burnt toast, it smelled amazing. It smelled like the most inspired toast on the planet. And he was like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And he was like, that's the sign of a stroke. And I was like, oh, really? Didn't have a stroke though. Now that I'm like averse to moldy, I know that neuroquants are the only brain scans that show the damage caused by the toxins of mold, mycotoxins. So PET scans, MRIs, all that stuff came back clear. And that's the thing with moldies, all of your tests will come back fine. At one point, they were like, I had lost 20 pounds in 1 week and I couldn't eat anything, right? I was reacting to everything except for like dark greens and meat. And I lost 20 pounds in that week just because I couldn't tolerate food. And they were like, you're obviously having like a midlife crisis. Nothing's wrong with you. All your scans came back fine. This happens to people when they get older and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if everything is fine, do a stool sample and tell me why there's so much blood in my stool. So they did that. And they were like, okay, something's weird. You shouldn't have that much blood in your stool. That's a given. I was like, thank you. So like, huzzah for all the blood. Because that's the only reason that they couldn't dismiss me as being like a psych patient. I was only in this moldy apartment end of March, April, May, and most of June. 3 months. 1, 2, 3. And by then, we figured out, my sister was like, it's your house. Your house is killing you. Leave for a weekend and tell me you don't get better. And I did. I left for a weekend, and I had a list of symptoms, dozens and dozens of symptoms at this point. And I left for a weekend, and for the first time, instead of new symptoms the next day, symptoms started falling off, dropping off, and I was like, oh my god, it's my house. So I only stepped foot in the house. I had to grab some stuff and then leave, and then one more time to like grab stuff. I threw most of my stuff away. Grab stuff, put in the dumpster, I'm out. My mother had just died, and a lot of my inheritance was her clothing. So I did do mold protocol things to that clothing. Borax and sage, basically hotboxing it with sage, washing it 1,000 times with borax in order to kill the mold on there. But almost everything else I threw away. Just so many symptoms. I can't even. The blood. Sorry. So gross and TMI, but like I was having nosebleeds. I was coughing up blood. I was having horrible periods that were so heavy. I was having chronic yeast infections. My ankles would swell. I think my like kidneys were failing. I can do this around my ankles. I have like deliciously small ankles, and I would go to the doctor and be like, I can usually do this to my ankle, but now my ankles are this big, and they were like, it's perfectly normal to like gain weight as you age. I'm like, not overnight, doc. Yeah, just everybody dismissed me. I finally found a doctor who was like, something triggered this chronic fatigue syndrome in you. I know all about it. My son's girlfriend has chronic fatigue syndrome, and now you're going to have to be on disability for the rest of your life, and you're always going to be sick. And I was like, screw you. I'm getting second opinion. disability for years. I'll probably get denied. Yeah, so much crazy systemic illness happened thereafter. I'm sorry about all the noise in the background. It's daytime here, and yeah, as much as I would like to have omnipotent control over everyone, it's not a thing yet. So yeah, that's what mold was like. Losing time, losing memories. Oh, I forgot the alphabet at one point. They were like, do your ABCs, and I was like, ABC. I forgot my last name. Headaches, really bad headaches, stomach cramps. Oh my god, I finally understood what it meant for your stomach to be tied in knots. Food sensitivities, intolerances, allergies, everything from like sneezing when you eat something and like runny eyes and like full on allergic response to all kinds of less pretty stuff. Bloating, like just eating something and looking like 9 months pregnant immediately. Alternating constipation, diarrhea. I know, real cute. We're getting so intimate here. But that's what my mold experience was like. And when I left my moldy apartment, I thought, cool, onward and upward. Like, I can focus on my comedy now. While I was in the moldy apartment, I actually went through my person I was seeing at the time and myself. We're both comedians. We started a monthly or weekly. I can't remember. I think it's a weekly stand-up showcase. So I want to say on Monday nights we had a weekly stand-up showcase, and on Friday nights I had my Second City what's it called, improv show. That's another thing. Losing words, so many words lost. Still have that problem. Still have a lot of problems with memory. I used to have like the most insane memory. I used to be like, remember in 7th grade when you wore that pink dress to the like school dance, and people were like, what the fuck? I do not have that memory anymore. Sorry, there were like really loud extracurricular sounds. I think they're over now. Oh, that feels really good. What was I talking about? Okay, so I leave my moldy apartment, right? And immediately I can do improv again. I had to take a couple weeks off when it got really bad because I couldn't like walk or talk. That's another thing. I literally couldn't walk. Thank God this person I was dating was like 6'8", is 6'8". He hasn't shrunk or anything. Because he had to carry me like marriage over the altar style all over Chicago to so many doctors, so many specialists, so many ERs. He's a saint. We're still friends, I guess. So improv you can do before you can do stand-up, because for improv you just need like a 2-minute memory, which is about where I was when I got out of mold. Okay, sorry, more extracurricular noises in the background. Okay, so I'm doing improv because I have like a 2-minute memory at this point, and I'm crushing it, by the way, if I do say so myself, especially considering that like I couldn't walk or talk for weeks. Yeah, it was crazy. I remember like literally like crawling places because I could not walk. My legs would just crumble beneath me. One time I fell down the stairs really bad. I think that's about when I stopped trying to be cool and walk and just started crawling everywhere that I wasn't being carried. So I'm doing improv and I'm crushing it, and I'm like, cool, onward. Okay, this is why in this best possible timeline I'm going to manifest income and move somewhere where I live all by myself and can shoot more videos. So back to my story. I'm doing improv. I'm crushing it. I'm so excited. I'm producing the stand-up showcase. It's going great. I'm like onward and upward, right? Then the humidity comes, and when the humidity came back to Chicago, all my symptoms symptoms come flooding back on humid days. I couldn't move my fingers. I couldn't talk. I couldn't walk. Not to mention, I still have tons of other problems. My memory is awful. My word recall isn't really there. I'm not able to memorize scripts to do my stand-up. Like, symptoms are falling, but then as soon as the humidity hits, everything comes pouring back. So I leave Chicago and I go to LA. And in LA, that's I realize I still don't know the alphabet because I'm working as a script supervisor for a movie, and I have to put something in alphabetical order, and I literally had to Google the alphabet. I learned it real quick, but I did have to Google the alphabet. No humidity though, right? Onward and upward. I just think I'm getting better and better. Not the case. I'm doing well for a while, and then I start to get breast infections. Super painful. They call them breast infections. They're really milk duct infections, which for all intents and purposes feel a lot like a nipple infection. So just imagine a golf ball in your nipple of pus. And I had to have them lanced and aspirated and go on so many antibiotics. And that was the first indicator of oh, this isn't over.